My name is Rob Spector. I'm the Vice President for Administrative Affairs and the Chief Financial Officer of the university. I want to welcome all of you to what I think is a grand experiment this morning in a conversation about the values of the university, talking about the importance, frankly, coming together to talk about things that really matter to us. When we conceptualized this, when we thought about how this would work, we put a lot of ideas out on the table, and we were actually wondering if anyone would be interested enough to show up. And the answer is obviously yes, and we very much appreciate the fact that all of you have come this morning. And those that are in the back and still looking for chairs, hopefully there's room in the back to stand, and we'll make you as comfortable as we can. For those of you who wish to avail yourselves of Spanish translation opportunity, we have headsets and real-time translation. Most of that portion of our community, I believe, have the headsets, but there are still some. So as you come in, please avail yourselves of those. We're also recording this session today that we'll have up on the web for people who weren't able to join us this morning. And as I said, this is very much a real-time experiment for us. Don't know how this will be received or how it will go, but I think it's very important for us to talk about the principles and the values that underlie our community. And we have, as you've seen, put together a written representation of our values, distilling down to the fundamental 10 values that we believe are very important to how we conduct ourselves at this university. Today's conversation will be about the first two of those principles, that of respect and equal opportunity. And we have a wonderful panel here to provide their thoughts and ideas on these topics, but we will make sure that we offer time towards the end of our session for folks who wish to offer comments or ask questions of our panelists here about these topics. So we'll be presenting for the next half hour or so, and then there will be opportunity for you as well. So before I formally introduce our panel, I want to tell you what we have in common besides being part of a community that cares. We're more than just a workplace. We're a community that cares, and we have these values, and it's important that not only do they exist on a piece of paper, but that we engage in thinking about, talking about them, and then living these values. Our three panelists each work for the university. Their jobs and titles are different from each other. They have different kinds of roles and responsibilities and different perspectives, as you'd expect. Whether it's in the classroom or in the office environment or determining policy that involves the entire university community, each of our panelists will share with us why these principles are important to them and how they shape their work. So let's meet our panelists. First and nearest to me is Dr. Bonnie Thornton-Dill. Dr. Dill became a Dean of the College of Arts and Humanities this past August. She started in this role just a month before I arrived on campus. Previously, she served in the Women's Studies Department for more than 20 years as professor and as chair for 8 years. She is internationally known for her scholarship on race and gender, Black and Latino women in higher education, as well as writings on issues such as work, family, and poverty. Dr. Dill has ably led women's studies here at the university. And next to Bonnie is Cynthia Trombley Allen. Goes by Cyn. That's with a C. Cyn has been on campus since 2000. She directs the Human Resources Services in University Relations and has been in that role since 2008. Cyn began her career here at the university as a shuttle coordinator at Shuttle UM, and in that role was overseeing student employment. She holds a Master's of Higher Education Administration with a focus on social justice from the University of Massachusetts at Amherst. And she also has a BA from Curry College in radio and TV broadcasting, which is why I should have had her MC this instead of me. Welcome, Sin. And we have, to Sin's left, Dr. Kumeya Shorter-Gooden. Dr. Shorter-Gooden has just been appointed the first Chief Diversity Officer of the university in its history, and has just come on board. And this is one of the first opportunities that she will have to meet and talk with a larger group of folks cross-cutting all of the areas of the university, and we're delighted to have you. Dr. Shorter-Gooden came to us from Alliant International University in Southern California, Associate Provost for International and Multicultural Initiatives was her title there, and she also was Professor and Coordinator of the Multicultural Community Clinical Psychology emphasis area at the LA campus of the California School of Professional Psychology. So she comes with a very interesting background and set of experiences that I think will shed a great deal of light on these topics. So we're going to make this as informal as we possibly can, given that we have microphones in front of us and we're up on a stage. But I'd like to start. I'd like to begin with Dr. Doe, and ask for your comments and your thoughts based on your experience and understanding specifically of this university and its experience in history, what it means for us to have put the principles of respect and equal opportunity as the number 1 and 2 on our list.
Well, thank you and good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. And I guess the first thing I will say, at one point when we began to talk about this, you asked how had I seen things change over the years since I'm the one on the podium that's been here longest. And the first thing I would say is I've been here 20 years and I've never been in an event like this. So I think that the idea of, I think while many people have shared some of these values and have operated on them within their own personal workspace, making them explicit, making them things that we all should acknowledge openly and subscribe to, is something that is different and is something that is important and is something that gives us all leverage to go back to our workspaces and to refer to and to use as a way of reminding us of how to behave and reminding our colleagues of how to behave as well. And I certainly think that this is an environment, to the extent that we want to be and strive to be an environment that cares, as you talk about, then we have to begin, first and foremost, with respecting one another. And we can only do that fully when we see one another as equals, when we see one another as people, and when we create structures that provide opportunities for everyone to maximize their talents and their resources. We are an educational institution, after all, and that's what we should be about. So I think it's very important that these are fundamental.
And I understand that you've done some groundbreaking work in your own college with respect to bringing awareness to these issues. Mm-hmm. Could you talk a little bit about the civility statement and its evolution?
Yeah. So the College of Arts and Humanities has developed really a couple of years ago a statement on civility, which I then reissued again when I assumed my position as dean. And the statement basically says that that we support and promote a diverse and open environment and a free exchange of ideas, but that these ideas are to be discussed without rancor, that demeaning, intimidating, and threatening behavior is unacceptable and contrary to our ethical principles. And it goes on to state that. And I think that came about really because, sometimes, unfortunately, bad behavior can lead to good things. And we certainly had instances of that, instances of people who were misusing their power and authority to demean other people or to intimidate them or to get their way. And they would there were people who would kind of repeatedly do this. And chairs, really, department chairs, who are the people, the leadership people who report to me, don't have any leverage that they can really use to control those people. And so we felt it would be important to develop a statement that we as a college could subscribe to, that we could use with one another, that chairs could use with their faculty, but because, faculty can be hard to control. And that they could use and that they could refer to and that the dean could refer to when people's behavior really was out of line, but also to raise up those values that we think are important in all kinds of circumstances. And so we have used this. Chairs have used it with faculty. I have used it really to say to people when people write to me because we've had a speaker and they say, I don't like that person's politics, they shouldn't be allowed to speak at Maryland, to say, oh no, we're an educational institution. Everybody ought to be able to speak. And to do it in a way that we welcome them and we listen to them and we have these exchanges without rancor and without demeaning people. So that was really kind of the first of our efforts to really focus on particularly respect for others.
And is it working?
Well, yes. Yes, it's working. As I said, some people have really used it. They have used it to chastise people when they've really been inappropriate in their behaviors to others, so it's been used in that way. But I think it's also been used. We give it to new faculty. We say to everyone, this is the environment we're trying to create, and I think that it helps support that environment. So I think it is working.
And I wonder if you could make some comments moving to, we put respect, I should back up, we put respect at the top of the list for obvious reasons. But equal opportunity is a close second, and I wonder if you have some comments on this.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing that we're doing in our college, in particular, that specifically speaks to equal opportunity, is that we're in the process right now of, I appointed a task force when I began to look at diversity and equity within the college and to look at how we are dealing with that at all levels and in all ranges, from our faculty, staff, students, our curriculum, to really assess where we are and to make some recommendations for the future. And so that is a way, I think, also of putting these ideas into practice and into a form that people can not just trust people to be good, but really help and facilitate the ways in which people engage. And so we are very committed in our college to creating equal opportunity. We've learned some things in this process. We've learned, for example, that our sense of how good we were on these issues was not really fully reflected in the data. So we have these ideas that we're really a diverse place, we're really equal, and all of these kinds of things. When we looked more closely, we weren't as good as we thought we were. And I think those are things that have to be brought to our attention, to be made known to people, and then we can address them. But if we kind of go around thinking that we're wonderful and never looking at the realities, then we can continue to pretend that we're just doing great. And so I think that's been an important step for us.
Thank you. I agree with that, and I think that it's important to consider these 10 principles not only as an amalgamation, a grouping of the values that represent many of the writings on this campus, our policies, our faculty handbook. There are many places across the campus where we describe what our values are, but they're fairly tough to find. And this approach was designed to make it simple, straightforward, and an easy reference. But it's more than that. It's also, quite honestly, an expectation of behavior at this university. It's an expectation not only by the leadership of the university, of the entire employee base, but it is also an expectation of people who work together in their own environment and the expectations they should have of each other. And that expectation needs to be stated. It isn't implied. It has been implied, but that's not good enough. I think it needs to be stated. We all recognize that people have different roles in life and in the workplace. And with those different roles frequently comes different power and different responsibilities. And the differences in power that we have regarding our workplace roles should be differentiated from our power as human beings over each other. We're all equals in this room and across the university in terms of our humanity. We have different roles and responsibilities, and with greater power and greater authority comes a greater sense of responsibility about how we exercise the relationships among people. And that really is what this is about. So we've heard from an academic leader perspectives from inside the college, and now I'd like to go to Sin to talk a little bit about her views as she looks at this from inside the office. And Sin, do you have opening comments, or what did you think of when you first heard of this initiative?
Good morning. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this. I have to admit, I saw these values on the front page of the UHR website, and I always look to that website to tell me what's going on in the university. And I found these new values, and I immediately emailed the webmaster, like the more information person, and it happened to be Gloria. And she said, hold on, because I was so excited to see these things in writing and see a communication tool that we could work with our staffs with. Supervisors can use this tool. Supervisees can use this tool. It's a conversation piece as a jumping off point. And as we talked about the other day, I want to see how we will use these in the PRD process. Like, how will we be talking to our staffs about how we engage with each other and how we respect each other, and what is conflict, and how will we move forward, and how will we learn, and all of those things. So I was happy to see these norms, these expectations that we'll all be engaging in. When I work with staff, I often look to the university's strategic plan. Why are we here? Why is the university here? And then I looked at now the diversity strategic plan. Okay, that's another piece of the puzzle. Why are we here? And then University Relations recently went through the process of writing their mission statement and their values. And again, it's something else that you can work with staff and say, why are we here? This is how we do, why we do what we do. And then to find this, how we interact and how we communicate with each other, and give people a place to start from when there is conflict or misunderstanding or lack of respect or lack of opportunity. I just was thrilled with finding that. And the minute that I was permitted to send it out, because Gloria said, wait, we have steps we're going to take, and we have posters we're going to make. So as soon as that went out, I sent it out to our division. This is a new communication tool that is here at the university. And I also put it in our orientation materials so that that new hires could see who we are. So I include all these pieces of the puzzle to help people see more about the University of Maryland.
Tell us, what kinds of reactions have you had within your division?
It's quiet. It's one of those things. I think the university sometimes stands on something and then there's not follow through. The communication is just one email that goes out. So I think people are waiting to see how these tools are used and referenced, and I think this way of communicating it to people and rolling it out is the smart way to do it, because it makes people think about it today and then next month when you do another session. So I think people have been waiting, but I'm happy to say I see quite a few of my colleagues here, so I think it's being received very well.
And the same question that I asked Bonnie, I appreciated if you would address. How do you see equal opportunity as a fundamental value and principle affecting the employees in your division? And how are the ideas communicated, and what are the issues around them?
I think the quickest mode of communication for equal opportunity, of course, is our search process. Engaging in our equity charge and letting folks know what we expect of people as you go through a search process, and how we work with candidates and provide them information and engage with them. I also think that other ways we offer equal opportunity or honor it is through training programs. What are people needing, whether it's to move up the ladder or what skills they need in the environment, how they effective communication, how we work with each other, as I've said before, what is conflict. So it's really just talking about it. When we hire folks, I meet with them in their first 5 days to kind of talk about the climate and the culture. You're new here. Let me tell you about the university. Let me tell you about our division. And let me tell you that I'm the equity person and how I can be helpful to you if things come up. And then 30 days later, I meet with them again. So you've been here. What has made you nervous? What's made you pause? So it's conversations. It's adding conversations about diversity to, like I say, the PRD process or the training programs. It's talking to supervisors. It's when I talk about the equity charge, I say there's a risk. Of course, there's a risk. We talk about equity from a risk standpoint, but also who are the students here? Who do we represent when we hire new staff? Like, if you want the students to come to the Alumni Association, who do they see when they walk in the door? So we look at it from that angle too. It's not just the paper and the regulations, it's the policy, it's the population. So I think, I hope that my openness to it and my asking supervisors and staff and climate assessments, how are they doing and what do they feel here, I think that starts the conversation. And I think we can look at our numbers and say we do a good job with diversity, but my next question would be, what about retention? And I've talked to folks here at the university of the number of services that we offer to students, which are amazing to bring students here and support students. But my next question would be, okay, what is there for staff? So I think we have more work to do, but I appreciate that the conversations are happening.
Thank you. One of the risks that a university takes when it decides that there is a new priority or an existing priority that needs reinvigoration and more emphasis is to consider how to communicate about that priority. And we think, rightly or wrongly, we think in terms of how shall we bring resources of the university to the issue? Shall we centralize responsibility and create a position and a title to signal to the university community and to the world that this activity is important to us? Or shall we use more of a groundswell distributed approach of creating champions for the activity or the issue among many, and having on a grassroots basis enthusiasm for the issue arise? Well, first you look at the environment in which you're trying to do this, and the University of Maryland is extraordinarily decentralized. So right there is a hint about an approach that one might take that might be a little more successful than simply a top-down centralized approach. But the other side of it is that we need champions, and we need people to really carry the torch. And the other risk of doing that when we create a position is some people say, well, we have a position for that. I don't need to worry about it because that person will worry about it. They get paid to worry about it. I don't have to worry about it. Right? Well, that is not what we are expecting to be the outcome of our new Chief Diversity Officer as she has joined the university. And Kamea, welcome. We are delighted to have you here.
Good morning, buenos dias. And thanks for that comment, because what you're saying means that we really have about 50,000 Chief Diversity Officers here. So thank you all for joining me in the work.
So I could ask you some questions, or I could start by maybe having you describe what does a Chief Diversity Officer do, and what do you hope to achieve here?
Well, the 50,000 of us are going to work together to create a fully equitable, diverse, and inclusive university where there is access for students, staff, and faculty from diverse groups, regardless of race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender, ability, socioeconomic status, did I say religion, age, where we work together to create success so that students, staff, and faculty who become part of our community thrive and do well, where we create a climate that is affirming and welcoming to people from diverse groups, and where we create an educational agenda where we educate our students to be able to work in a diverse, dynamic world and develop scholarship and research that serves our community and serves historically underserved communities that need our scholarship, our research, our contributions. So that's what we're going to do.
What has surprised you so far here as you've gotten to just begin to know us?
I think what surprised me most is what you just spoke about, how many silos there are. I think Laura Scott used the term how many pods or pads there are. We are very dispersed, and there's some I think value in that. There's sort of a let 1,000 flowers bloom, and there are projects and initiatives, for example, related to diversity across the university that have emerged organically, and I think there's some virtue in that. However, I think at times the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and in a time of tight resources, it can help to better collaborate and to find ways that we can work together across some of the boundaries and barriers.
I understand that you're going to be working on something that has been termed a diversity plan, and there are many interpretations that I could imagine of what that means. But how should we, the university community, expect to see in a tangible fashion the results of planning around diversity, and with the idea that we are driving to become an environment the hallmarks of which are respect and opportunity?
Mm-hmm. So let me talk about what I see as some of the hard parts, some of the difficult parts. And I'm a psychologist, so I tend to think about kind of what gets in the way of human beings doing what we say we want to do. I think if we did a poll and asked people, is it important for you to be respected? Do you respect other people? Do you believe in equal opportunity? I think almost 100% would say absolutely to all three of those questions. Yeah, absolutely, that's me. But I think the reality is that many people feel disrespected. Many people experience not being treated equitably. So there's a disconnect between what I think all of us believe and really want to enact and what we do. And I think part of what gets in the way is that, for example, with respect, what respect is different. There are generational differences in what respect means. There are regional differences. There are cultural differences. For some people, feeling respected means people say hello to you when you walk onto the work site. For others, that's a non-issue. For someone, it might mean being called Mrs. Smith rather than Ella. There's no right or wrong there, but those are differences. And so what's important is for each of us to find out what others need to feel respected, and to articulate, to tell them what we need, because there's not one way of demonstrating respect. There really are these differences. Around equal opportunity, I think one of the real challenges is that there's a human tendency to clone. I'm most attracted to, I'm most comfortable with the people who tend to be kind of like me. That's a human tendency. So I'm most likely to admit the student who's sort of like me. I'm most likely to hire the employee who seems real familiar, kind of like my cousin or the folks down the block that I grew up with. I'm most likely to provide support to and help advance the employee who's culturally similar to me. There's a human tendency to do that, but that really flies in the face of equal opportunity. The notion that all students, staff, and faculty should have access and be given the opportunity for success regardless of their background. And so that cloning tendency is one that we really have to address. And my view is that we can address these challenges to respect and equal opportunity, but we have to work at it. We have to be very self-conscious about it, and we have to realize the disconnect between what we say we believe and our behavior and its impact on others.
And that takes us right back to our fundamental mission as an educational institution of teaching ourselves the tools that we need, bringing the tools and teaching ourselves how to use them in order to be able to take actions and live the values that we're talking about. And it's interesting because universities everywhere have this challenge, and I've worked at enough of them to be able to make this blanket statement with some reasonable impunity. We are very good at educating our students, but we're not so good at educating ourselves. And we have work to do there. I believe we have important work to do with regard to training and development at this university for our employees, and I'll be turning attention to that, along with, I hope, many others, another 50,000, as Kamea says, because we need champions for training and development across the university, not just in one office. And that training and development is not only what we need to build stronger skills for conducting our own jobs, but also for interacting with each other. I think respect has at its basis a bit of curiosity, human curiosity. If we are curious about other people and want to learn about them with an open mind and an open heart, then we stand a much better chance of appreciating them, their differences and their similarities to us. Without that curiosity, we make conclusions that may or may not be true. We draw inferences from an action or a reaction that may not be based in fact at all. And ultimately, we don't have the basis for strong relationship. And I think it's curious that curiosity might be the root of it, but it is for me. I think open-mindedness and curiosity have a real role to play in developing respect for other people. I want to make the audience aware of a number of resources that we have here at the university around these principles, and to assist them either in providing tools or advice or as a place to go for redress when there are issues that need to be raised. And we have provided for you an employee resources brochure that lists many of the offices, and I have no doubt that we have omitted some very important office here because the phone will be ringing off the hook when we discover which one it was. But we tried to capture a representation of many of the offices here at the university that are created, funded, and designed to provide assistance to our university community in a number of ways. There are a number of people here in the audience, and again, I will risk the sin of omission by calling on a few of them just to identify yourself so people can recognize you and know who you are. Our ombudsperson is Cynthia Tucker. Cynthia is here. Just raise your hand one more time. Okay, thank you. Roger Candelaria, are you here? Our compliance officer. I saw Gay Gullickson here somewhere. Maybe I didn't. Gay is is the chair of the President's Commission on Disability Issues. Gloria Buis. Gloria's here. She is the chair of the President's Commission on Ethnic Minority Issues. Is Tanner Ray here? Tanner? Chair of the President's Commission on Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Issues. Dr. Ellen Skolnick? There you are.
Okay, please, two roles. I'm also chair of both of the Women's Commission, but also faculty ombudsperson.
Excellent. Welcome. Is Rob Waters here? For the remaining time before Dr. Waters moves on to other professional pursuits, and by the way, congratulations, Rob, he chairs our Equity Council. And our AFSCME representatives, Greg Johnson is president. Is Greg here? Greg? And Craig Newman in the back there. So these are a few of the resources that are available to us, and we want to make sure that you're familiar with them, and please feel free to look them up, to seek them out, to have conversations with them. They are here for you. No other purpose. They're here for you. This is the appropriate point, I think, to offer some opportunity for the audience to engage with us. We can take no time or as much time as you would like, up to the hour. And our purpose really is to share your comments about workplace respect as it relates to your circumstance, as it relates to your ideals and your aspirations. I want to caution that this is not intended to be a time where we air grievances or seek redress about personal or personnel issues in the workplace, but instead, if anyone would like to come up to a microphone in the center here and make comment, you are welcome to do so. Please, when you do, identify yourself so that we all know your name, and then feel free.
Hi, my name is Mark Brimhall Vargas. I'm the Associate Director of the Office of Diversity, Education, and Compliance. First of all, I want to thank the panel for having this event. I think it's great that we are talking about our university values. I think the one thing that when I had seen the email and then the website, et cetera, I think that the one thing that I'm hopeful for is increasing. Is this working? Yes, it is working. Sorry. Increasing alignment between our stated values and, of course, what actually happens on campus. The fundamental concern that I want to raise to the community is about aligning ourselves not just as individuals, but about sort of the institution itself. Because let me give you an example. I think that one of the things that I have raised in the past is where the institution sort of places its resources and who it brings to campus in terms of the larger impact in our society. An example is Chick-fil-A and the union. It's a problematic piece here, because I think it's good that we talk about interpersonal sort of experiences with each other, but we also have to think about the environment that we create has to be in alignment with what other people see that are major decisions that affect the entire campus. And so I would like to see that this continue, but that we also use this as an opportunity not just in PRDs, but in terms of how the cabinet makes decisions about expenditures of resources, how the union chooses to allot space to particular entities that are extremely discriminatory. So I just want to raise that as a I want to cheerlead this, and I want to call us to ethical action as we move forward with it.
Thank you very much. And do any members of the panel have comment in response, or anything to add?
Just wanted to say that, I think you're absolutely right, Mark. It's really important to acknowledge that issues of respect and equal opportunity aren't simply individual. They're also institutional, intergroup, and the individual is important, but we also have to pay attention to how these values are institutionalized or not in our community. So that's a great point.
My name is John Townsend. I'm the Dean of the College of Behavioural and Social Sciences. I think one particular challenge that we have with respect to both of these key issues relates to this topic of decentralisation and the fact that so many of us live in silos. The work experience of most people is not that of coming to the University of Maryland. It is coming to a particular department or sub-department or sub-unit. And one of the things, I really enjoy my job as Dean, but one of the things which I have not enjoyed is finding out about some of the bad behaviours in some of the units. And I think often people put up with that bad behaviour, and they're discriminated against, and they feel undervalued because they have not been aware that there are people out there to whom these things are very important and who want to do something about it. And I think, I guess, two comments. One, this really does give every administrator a really good chance to try and improve behaviours. The second thing I think is that people must be aware and be willing to speak out when things are wrong. I've been astonished at times about how some behaviours have been tolerated in units which you never would have believed would have been tolerated. And this is not just one-on-one, this is people observing completely unacceptable behaviour but not stepping up. So I think as a community, if we can be aware of these values and be proactive, we can create a much better community. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any follow-on comments?
Well, I would just say amen to that. And that was really kind of the purpose of our civility statement. And I think this gives added weight to these things. And I think it hopefully, if we can keep communicating this to everyone, that these don't just exist on paper. I mean, they now exist. If you will be supported in your actions and your concerns with regard to these things by the administration of this university, because we believe that they're important. So that for me, putting them on paper is also a way, it gives me actually even more authority in a way to deal with these kinds of issues and to know that I will be supported up the line with regard to them. And I think not only for me, but I think it applies to everyone. It really, and that's what we want people to understand, that when you see people acting, the see something, say something that we're all so, but it is when you see or you experience people acting in ways that are inappropriate, and you point this out to your supervisor, that your supervisor has leverage and your supervisor knows that they will be supported, and therefore you can know that you will be supported. You're not isolated and alone in this process.
Absolutely correct.
I just want to add something as Laura comes up to the microphone. One of the things we had talked about the other day was the rights and the responsibilities of everyone in this conversation. I think sometimes people move forward and think, oh, my supervisor is responsible for managing this. And it isn't just top down, as they say. I'm not a fan of hierarchy, but to use the more understood words, it's not just top down. We all have a responsibility in engaging in respect and understanding what respect is to each other. It's, again, a conversation point. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Sen. How are you? Hi, guys. Laura Scott, Center for Leadership and Organizational Change. I have a specific question, which is to the permanence of this or the editability of this, I guess. I noticed in particular in the first principle, gender identity is not included. It's up for discussion in Annapolis right now. Is there a plan or a thought or a process for making additions for omissions?
I consider this to be something of a living document. We certainly wanted to move with some alacrity to get this program of communication begun. But if there are omissions that should be considered, we certainly will consider them.
Hello, my name is Nick Sakurai. I work in the Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Equity Center on campus. There's just so many different issues and things that come to me, and I just want to mention a few of them, in part because I feel that sometimes they don't rise to the higher levels, right? And so you might not be hearing these things for two reasons. One, either because they're being handled quite well on the sort of more localized level, or because people are afraid to raise things higher and just haven't done so because of those fears. And I think it's actually been a combination of both of those reasons. And you may be well aware of some of these things, but I've seen issues around LGBT inclusion, with faculty tenure issues, with faculty who are doing research in these areas and their colleagues are saying very anti-LGBT things and having to go through a process to try to ensure that that won't affect their tenure process. I've seen employees, faculty members and others who were talking about forming campuses abroad in other countries, and some countries have policies where you can be executed for being gay or you can be put in prison for being gay. And when those faculty are bringing those concerns within their colleges, sometimes the response is basically, well, that doesn't matter that much, you're just a minority, essentially. And so the kind of feeling, this desire of feeling wholeness within the university isn't always there. I've seen cases of harassment, certainly where employees, an employee in particular, sending emails to students who put their name on a list that we have occasionally done in the past, an out list, to say, I want to let people know I'm openly LGBT or T, and to send emails to them saying, well, you don't have to be gay and you can do this and that. And then the response is just to sort of say, well, we're going to do a little slap on the wrist and say, well, you can do it during your lunch hour, but you can't do it during your work hours, to me is unacceptable in a sense. And so to me, there's like this broader culture. Of course, we have these specific issues. Chick-fil-A is an issue. There are many other problems on campus with working with, whether it's vendors. To me, can we go above and beyond compliance on saying, well, the vendor doesn't break any laws, so is that the bar for social responsibility, or can we take it much further than that? Because to me, that's a very, very low bar.
Thank you. Are there other comments?
Good afternoon. My name is Solomon Palmer, Jr. I here works for Building Service and Great Unit Housekeeping, one of the hardest working units in this campus. And of course, our Vice President Spector, we did get the opportunity to work together. I want to make two basic comments, and then I want to engage the panelists, because I have a different perspective about how we approach respect. But let me just say I'm optimistic and hopeful about this gathering here. At the same time, I'm somewhat saddened that at this particular season of life that we have to continue to talk about respect. Let me reflect for a moment. Back in the 60s, Aretha Franklin sung a song about respect. As we recognize and celebrate Black History Month, Dr. Carter G. Woodson wrote a book called The Miseducation. And basically, his premise, he was basically saying education is fine. However, we have to make sure that it's the appropriate education. So here's my questions to the panelists. I take the approach of respect. I believe that values are not taught, but they're caught. That's what I'm basing it on. And I base that on when I think about my children and I think about my grandchildren. I find it hard for me to be able to inspire and to mentor and motivate them and role model and demonstrate appropriate behavior by, and I'm not knocking it, by posters and signs, because I'm not sure how well they're going to internalize that. But when I reach them at the level where they're at, acknowledging their humanity and engaging them at the level where they're going to understand, then I believe it's more useful. Because I'm mindful that we have what's still called the Ten Commandments, and it was a law that was given up there. But at the reality, people couldn't keep. They had it posted, but they couldn't keep it. Because the reality, it wasn't an intellectual endeavor, but it was more of a matter of the hearts. So, my question to the panelists is, is the evidence supports that as we continue to teach what it used to be called years ago, behavior modification, and on and on and on. Where are we at today in terms of, because I firmly believe that values are taught and not, values are caught and not taught. If you can respond to that, please.
Any takers?
I'll be the first taker. No, I agree with you, and I think you said it really. You said they had to post the laws, the commandments, but then they also had to behave in a certain way. So I do think that, and I do think that that's an important role of people in leadership positions. It's an important role of everybody, but certainly you set the tone as a supervisor or in a leadership position by how you treat your staff, by how you treat the people who come in and out of your building, by how you treat, so it's kind of basic. So I think you do set a tone, and to the extent that we each take responsibility for that, and we each take responsibility for treating everybody that we encounter on this campus with dignity and respect, and we don't get hung up in, I already spoke to them. Why are you speaking to them? Because, my job is to welcome people, and I already welcomed them, and somebody else welcomes them, and you get upset. No. I mean, if 40 people welcome you, right? So I do think, I agree with you. I think we need the rules. We need the things posted, but we also need the behavior. And that, I think, calls upon all of us, and particularly the leadership, to behave in that way and to set a role model.
And I would agree with you in the sense that it's a conversation. I mean, people always go back to, well, that's common sense, and I'm not a fan of common sense. I don't know that it has meaning, because what's common? You have to talk with someone to understand their values or what they believe in, and work from there. You can't always meet them. You're not going to make everybody happy, and you're not going to do things that people think is the right thing that you're supposed to do. But conversing about that, I think, is the starting point. And not making assumptions that people know already. They already know, or they already should act a certain way. They don't necessarily know what that is, agree with what that is either.
And I certainly agree with what you shared, Solomon. I think one way to think about this kind of change is to think about head, heart, and hands, that it helps for people to have some ideas, some concepts in their head that they can think about and mull over. But you're absolutely right. That's not enough. It's got to take hold in the heart. They got to feel it. We've got to want to do it. We've got to have some passion, hopefully, about it. And then we've got to have hands. We've got to have skills. We may know that respect is important. We may really want to be respectful, but we've got to learn some skills, use our hands and our feet and our words to interact in a way that conveys that to other people. So I think you're right. It's really important not to think that just saying it is enough. We've got to do much more. We also need to build this into the reward structure. I think Dr. Dill mentioned the PRDs, or maybe it was Ms. Trombley. We have to build into the reward structure. We need to incentivize people to do what we say we value. So that's also important. We can't let people off the hook. We have to include these issues when people are evaluated. And then the last thing I want to say is I think it's also really, really important for us to start with ourselves. the tendency is for all of us to say to ourselves, I'm cool with these things. It's somebody out there who's the perpetrator. I would really challenge us all to look at our own ways that we can enhance the way that we demonstrate respect and demonstrate equal opportunity. Because I don't think it's as simple as the folks who came in this room for this event got it and some other folks don't. So we all have the capacity to start there.
Thank you, Solomon. I appreciate the comment and the responses. We have time for maybe 2 or 3 more questions or comments.
Good morning. I'm Dan Hayes. I'm an architect planner in the Facilities Planning Office. We've just completed the master plan for the next 10 years, which I'm sure you'll all be seeing if you haven't seen it so far. 2 things, if I might. The first is, could we add to our list of the categories of people that we wish to address, that you have GLBT women, all that, add the differences between faculty and staff that exist on the campus. And the second is, I would appreciate your possibly speaking to the idea of how we create a sense of safe space throughout the campus, that raising questions isn't considered insubordination, but is part of a dialogue process, and that we encourage everyone to talk and to be able to dialogue as part of our communication process, rather than being afraid to say anything because you never know who's going to come down upon you.
Thank you for the questions. Who would like to address the faculty staff?
I'll address the first part and then hand it off if that's okay. One of the isms that, we talk about isms, racism, heterosexism, sexism, and so forth, but one of the isms that we don't talk about much is what I'll call academic elitism. And I think that's something that we really, really need to address in keeping with the question that was raised. We do have a status hierarchy where in academia, it's not just here in College Park, faculty tend to have more status than most staff, not than all staff, but than many staff. And faculty sometimes, certainly not always, but sometimes wield their power in ways that aren't pretty. That was referred to earlier. So I think one of the things that we really have to pay attention to is hierarchy, differences in class, differences in income, socioeconomic status, differences in the academic ranking system, and how that impacts how we relate to each other. It's much easier to be respectful to the person up the ladder, and we sometimes slip and are less respectful to the person whom we supervise or whom we deem to be subordinate. All of us have to pay attention to how we utilize our power and to this kind of chronic difference between faculty and staff that I think gets in our way at times.
Well, I agree with that, and I think the faculty-staff divide is real. It is problematic in many ways. It's not going to disappear quickly, and yet I think it is something that we must be aware of and that we must address. I think that may be in kind of helping people to see the ways in which, even more visibly, the ways in which the work that they do. I mean, we're all here for one purpose. It's kind of being clear about what the mission is, and then how we all contribute to the mission, and making apparent the important ways in which all of these various groups contribute to the mission, could be one thing to help in that. The other thing that I think might help in this evaluation process, and I don't know, I don't even know where we are on considering it. You talked about the PRDs, but and you talked about kind of in building things into the reward structure. And people have raised with me this whole issue about, I think it's called 360 evaluations, so that it's not just the supervisor that evaluates the staff, member, but a staff member also has an opportunity to evaluate in some kind of formal and safe and protected ways the people who supervise them. I think that's something we need to look at.
We are at the end of the hour, and what I would like to do is make one comment to the second part of the questioner's issues, and then just make a couple of closing comments, if I could. With regard to having conversations that are about difficult things, having those conversations heard, acknowledged, and respected, it's our goal that there wouldn't be a safe place, but that everywhere would be the safe place to have those kinds of conversations. Now, it comes back to my earlier comments about the differences in power and in authority between certain people at the university and their relationship to each other, supervisor versus the supervised. But having said that, that extra power that a supervisor has must be wielded responsibly, and the supervisor needs to have the tools to be able to have an intelligent and far-reaching conversation about difficult issues without viewing that as threatening, without creating an environment that's threatening, and that ultimately allows the issue to be aired and ultimately resolved. Because if we don't air the issues, we can't resolve them. And if it's not safe to air the issues won't be aired. Or they'll be aired in ways which really doesn't meet our first choice for how we conduct ourselves in this university community, through acting out in negative ways in the workplace as opposed to adults working out their issues. And so I simply want to acknowledge that issue and say that that's something that we collectively as a university community need to work on that. Now we're at the end of our hour, and I want to take just a moment to thank a couple of people and to give you a special parting gift. First, I want to thank our panel, who has done just an exemplary job. I'd also like to express my appreciation to Gloria Aparicio Blackwell and to Laura Anderson Wright and to Kim Colbert for their help in organizing this. Thank you very much. We have in the back a bookmark. Some of us still read books, not the electronic kind, so it could be useful to you in that way. But this has the principles on the back, and it has our friend Testudo on the front, and it's important to realize that Testudo that is on this is embedded with wildflower seeds, which I encourage you to plant to get a head start on spring, to grow some of the ideas and values that we've talked about here today, and as a reminder of our gathering and the things that we talked about. Thank you again. We're adjourned.